Happy holidays, at least it is for football fans. The NFL Draft is here, and this is our Steelers Now coverage on Pittsburgh Sports Live of the NFL Draft, leading up all the way to the Steelers pick in the first round. I am your host, Mike Asti, and this broadcast presented by Beaver County Auto, and right here, the Walnut Grill in Robinson, hosting our NFL Draft show for Steelers Now. I am joined alongside Cale Berger and Parker Hurley. Alan Saunders doing some work right now behind the scenes. Maybe he's going to jump on this broadcast if he can. Mike Fakova can. Joe Steigerwald as well, kicking it behind the scenes. Guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, anything else you may celebrate. This is a holiday for football fans, and it is here. There were some rumors. The Steelers, though, right now slotted in to pick at number 20, maybe trying to trade up, maybe trying to improve their positioning. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of potential surprises here, and a lot the Steelers need, because this is a different year than normal. This is a season in which they missed the postseason. They're trying to rebuild more and get back into the postseason where they're mostly familiar with. Now, Parker, there's been conversation and rumbling the Steelers were trying to trade up. The Steelers seemingly trying to trade up maybe for one of the two Devins, trying to get that linebacker. There's cornerback, there's wide receiver, there's a lot of needs for the Steelers, but obviously they'd have to give up a lot to trade up. Do you think that's a wise decision? Would that be something you'd advise for them to trade up, to give up the haul they would need to give up to get that selection?
Right, and yeah, that's kind of what you were saying along the lines of, the linebacker is by far their biggest need. And in terms of, the best player at the biggest need, Devin Bush is going to be, a top 10 player at their biggest need. The question that, like you said, they have plenty of needs, and while they have 10 draft picks.
To say the least, yeah.
Right. While they have 10 draft picks, you still go in saying, to get from 20 to 10, how much is that really going to cost? It sounds like.
What do you think it would cost?
It sounds like it would cost at least, their second-round pick, one of their third-round picks, probably the third-round pick they got from Oakland, the higher of the two, and then maybe like a future third, something along those lines. So, you're saying that second and third-round pick, depending on how deep this draft is, those are top 70 picks. Those players could get on the field next season. So could you get 3 players on the field next season, or do you want that one Devin Bush? That's where it becomes the question.
Now, Cale, in terms of Devin Bush, in terms of him as a player and him as a draft prospect, do you see enough of him? I mean, is he somebody that you would covet that much? Is he a Kuechly? Is he a Brian Urlacher that you would be willing to almost mortgage most of your draft? Because the Steelers, in that situation, would then be left with the Antonio Brown pick and mostly late-round selections.
I would, and not only because I think that Devin Bush is a fantastic player, a fantastic talent at the middle linebacker position, but also because I think he fits exactly what the Steelers need. Ever since the unfortunate injury to Ryan Shazier 2 years ago, this Steelers defense has lacked significant speed at the middle linebacker spot. Someone who can defend sideline to sideline. If you add a guy like Devin Bush, who ran a 4.43 at the combine, a great split on the shuttle drill. I mean, he is an athletic linebacker. He's the future of the linebacker position, what you want in the NFL. A speedy guy that can cover and make tackles in space. I think Devin Bush fills all of those categories for the Steelers. And honestly, if I was in the situation, I would do what I can to make the deal to move up in the draft and be able to get a guy like him, because I think he's that much of an impact player and could solve so many of their issues defensively.
He's a different product than even the guys I mentioned in terms of the Urlachers and the Kuechlys, Ray Lewis's, etc., because he does fit into more of the current NFL mold. Those guys maybe wouldn't have, due to maybe lacking the speed. He would fit right in, but I was at the media session with Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin on Monday, and they made it clear. They actually said some kind of breaking news, interesting developments. Guys, I know you've done some mock drafts. Parker, you put some mock drafts up on SteelersNow.com. You guys can still check those out. Kevin Colbert says, Parker, you wasted your time. Should never have done it. Completely a waste of time. Totally pointless. At least that's what he said in terms of his point of view as a general manager of a franchise. Kevin Colbert said the Steelers haven't done mock drafts in 10 years. And Tomlin nodded along. Completely a waste of time is what they kept reiterating. So they made it clear. They don't look for need. They look for best available. I guess, even though you'd be risking the rest of your draft, it would kind of lend to them trying to mortgage things and trading up for a linebacker if that's maybe who they think is the best available, because they have a lot of needs, so they maybe would rather go for the best.
Right. I think that fits into, like you said, they might trade up for Devin Bush because you start to look into this class and you know, how many players can you list off before Devin Bush is that best player available?
Right.
And while Kevin Colbert said we don't do mock drafts, what he said was, you know, we'll do a mock draft, but it's a Steelers mock draft in terms of the Steelers are on the pick for number 1.
They're ranking their depth of value.
Right, and they're saying that if we select for 20 picks, we're going to get that 20th player at the very worst case scenario. You know, if other teams do, you know, take players that we don't value that high, we won't take them. But they might look at Devin Bush and say, you know, well, he's the 6th best player available, let's just say. And then you add in the fact that there's a huge drop-off from Devin White, Devin Bush, and then who's the 3rd best linebacker? You know, you could start naming off 7, 8 cornerbacks. You could start naming off, you know, how many outside linebackers in this draft? 8, 9,
Right.
10. There's 2 linebackers. So then all of a sudden you say, that's 6th player on our board. He's the 6th best player in the draft. He becomes a number 1 priority. And you say, to the Steelers, he might be worth the number 1 pick because he's that priority to them. So you say, just to move up to number 9 for our number 1 player, it becomes, you know, enticing.
Which is what they said. They really do consider value when trading up or down, and we're going to keep updating you on the NFL draft as we move things along. No surprise, Kyler Murray out of Oklahoma does go number 1 overall to Arizona. Very, very interesting with Cliff Kingsbury becoming the head coach and kind of shaking things up. They draft Rosen and now another quarterback and clearly changing the whole course of their franchise after just 1 season. So anything that's too surprising that may affect the Pittsburgh Steelers, we'll hit on and we'll make a part of this show. Mike Asti, Alan Saunders, Parker Hurley, Cale Berger, Steelers Now's draft coverage leading up to the Steelers' first pick in the first round of the 2019 NFL Draft. Right here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Remember to click subscribe on our YouTube channel to make sure you get this and the rest of our content on the channel, and follow us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live. Now, guys, the Steelers made it clear they prefer value. They prefer the best over need. I guess, Cale, I kind of want to ask you, do you agree with their strategy? There's been some criticism that maybe this is why they've struggled in recent drafts. They have a lot of need, especially at the cornerback position, which is what Kevin Colbert in particular has been criticized in terms of failing to draft. I was there, man. It was emphatic. We don't do mock drafts. We don't care about need.
Yeah, well, I agree with what Parker was saying, that they do a mock draft for themselves. They're making a list of what players they like, who they think can help them the most. I don't really buy it that they are just completely drafting on best available. I mean, this team has some clear needs. This is a team that was not in the playoffs last season. They clearly have holes they need to address. So I don't buy that one bit that they are just going to take whoever's the best available, where there might be a talent that you just can't pass up. Like we talked about a little earlier, and we're going to keep talking about for the remainder of the broadcast until the Steelers make that first selection, they have serious holes and they need to fill those holes. So I don't agree with the notion that, we're just going to take whoever we think is there that's going to be the best player. No, if you need a defensive back, you need to take that defensive back. If you need a middle linebacker, you need to take one or do what you can to get up and get them to get this team back to the playoffs where everyone in this city thinks they belong.
Now, I want to jump in here because I think the Steelers did something interesting that justifies that stance this offseason. If you look at what they did in free agency this offseason,
right,
and the additions that they made, I feel like they put themselves in a position where they're able to draft maybe not the best player available
off position of need.
Right. I feel like they're in a position to maybe not draft the best player available. Yeah, right. They're not going to take a quarterback. Okay. They're not going to take a running back. They're not going to take a running back in the first round.
Big Ben's Twitter account and his next show, they would do an impromptu broadcast in the middle of the offseason, would be pretty lit.
Right now, maybe. Actually, it might be tonight.
Go right now on a Facebook Live.
But they have a lot of needs, and they literally they could take a wide receiver. They could take a tight end. They definitely could take a tight end. They could take
underrated.
They could take a defensive lineman, not because they really need one, but it's a really deep drafted defensive line. They could take an outside linebacker. They could take an inside linebacker. They could take a cornerback. They could take a safety. Those are all legitimate needs for this team.
Yeah.
And so when Kevin Colbert says, we're going to take the best player available, on one hand, I think that's kind of BS because I don't think that they're not going to,
I've been lied to in that media room before.
Like Barker said, they're not going to take a quarterback. On the other hand, this is a team with a lot of needs, and I don't think any of them necessarily outside of inside linebacker, which I don't think they're going to get at 20. Right. I don't think any of the other ones necessarily need to be prioritized over any of the other ones. So I do think they're free to go a lot of different directions with this pick, and in a lot of ways, it would be kind of a fruitless exercise to sit there and try to figure out. The teams that are doing that are like the Bengals at 11. Oh, we really want an inside linebacker. Or one of the Devons going to make it to us. If you're a team that thinks, well, we could take one of 7 or 8 different positions, then it doesn't really matter what everybody does ahead of you. You just make your rankings of the players that you like, and when it's your turn to pick, you take the one that you had rated the best.
And that's exactly what they actually said. That was a question that a colleague asked, and they don't care what a rival does. Because there was controversy a couple years ago with the Ravens stealing picks from them right in front of them.
Right, Max Williams, tight end.
Exactly. They don't care, though. They said they're not going to worry about it. They're going to worry about their board above all else. But we mentioned they have so many needs, and that is why that maybe they would just take the best available or be willing to trade because they need to fix so many holes that they're missing the playoffs and underachieving based on their talent. What, though, would you say is their biggest need? Not necessarily the player that you're saying they're going to have to draft, but what need do they absolutely have to fill in this draft? Whether it be they didn't do enough in the offseason because they did bring in a corner, or just in general something that they need to immediately fix.
And, we still keep going back to, there's a reason they're trading up for Devin Bush, because while all things aside, and we do think Devin Bush is a great player, it still is their biggest need. And it goes back to, they lost Ryan Shazier, and then from the second they lost Ryan Shazier, you could just feel an impact, on that defense, and it went into, an embarrassment in the playoffs against the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? Yes. And, they go into that draft and they draft, Terrell Edmonds a safety, and then, a wide receiver, and then a quarterback, and offensive line, and you're saying, well, where's the linebacker? And then, they go throughout the season and, Morgan Burnett's playing in the linebacker role. And, now he's cut because he said, I wasn't supposed to play the linebacker role. And John Bostic and LJ Ford are defending Keenan Allen. You're still sitting back saying, well, they just went an entire offseason and now a full season without replacing Ryan Shazier.
It's got to be into the top 10 to ensure a shot at him.
What would you imagine they would need to give up to do that, though? We talked about the risk of it in the beginning of the show here.
The second plus probably. The second and like one of their thirds and a fourth or next year. They have 2 fourths next year, something along those lines.
I still wouldn't do it, honestly. As much as that's a need for the Steelers, and it's been evident, and I was at the playoff game when the press box and Ryan Shazier 2 years ago was a big hole, even that season that he got hurt. But that's just a lot for the Steelers to give up. They didn't get the first-round pick for Antonio Brown that many thought they should have. They didn't even get the haul the Giants got for Odell Beckham Jr. They got a 3rd and a 5th for Antonio Brown and his lunacy, which you can catch all of my coverage on all of my shows there on Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live. That's all listed for you, as I basically talked about him and his insanity for 10-plus shows that went on so long. Because of that, I don't feel like the Steelers can be that much of a risk-taker unless they really feel like this is a future Hall of Famer. Not even somebody that can plug in a need right now, but an immediate Hall of Fame type of player is really what they would need for that to be worth it.
So the Buffalo Bills pick is in, so it's not going to be number 9. Reports are it's Ed Oliver, defensive tackle. Lions took T.J. Hawkinson, tight end. It was a player that some people thought might be there for the Steelers at 20.
Yeah, right. And they do have that need as well, right?
From number 8. I don't think the Steelers are going to trade up.
No.
It's over now because Denver is going to take a linebacker or a quarterback, and then we'll go.
Cincinnati's going to take the other.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see from there. So yeah.
If the Steelers trade up now with how this unfolded, that would be the new most surprising thing in the draft. I would then be shocked if that happened, and that would be a major risk that I would be very excited for the next Kevin Colbert press conference, because that would then be a major risk of what he had to give up based on what he said in terms of not for need, in terms of value, and not worrying about other teams and not doing mock drafts. I would then ask him several questions in terms of, man, you must have really loved this pick. You must figure this is a future Hall of Famer in order for you to do this. If not, and you're just saying, well, it's a player that's going to be a nice help for us right now, we don't want to put the pressure there, because that's what you know he's going to say, then it's a bit of a concern, and that might be the Bills fan of the century there. I don't go watching this on TV probably while you have the show in the corner of your computer or phone, and that was a Bills fan there. It was an elderly woman with a hat, and I don't know, she had a sombrero on. Keeping up, she's a charter member there of the Bills Mafia. But it does appear the Steelers are not able to trade up right now. I'd be interested, we may never know if they really did try do their due diligence, if they felt it was too much of an ask, if they were going to give up too much, or if they just somehow it didn't happen and they were willing to, but it didn't end up occurring. That would be very interesting.
I think it was, like you said, that it just became too much of an ask. It almost to the point where, like I'm saying, hey, they might take a quarterback. And if Denver doesn't take a quarterback, Cincy might take a quarterback. And, quarterback prices are different than regular player prices. That's just typically how it is. So I think a lot of teams are saying, hey, if you're going to trade up from 20 up to here, you're going to have to pay a quarterback price. And I think, like you said, at that point, the Steelers have to look and say, then it needs to be a Hall of Fame player.
Right.
And, even Devin Bush, I think, we all love Devin Bush. I love Devin Bush. I think he's great.
They just weren't bad enough to fall into having it be a Devin Bush draft. They missed the playoffs, but they weren't bad enough.
And, if you're not going to trade up for Devin Bush this year, why didn't you trade up for Leighton Vander Esch last year? It's kind of how I see it. He was closer within range, and they had a chance. So if you didn't trade up for Leighton Vander Esch, then as much as I love Devin Bush, I feel like that's as good as it's going to get.
Alan, chime in the bit here.
I think that the one thing that that has also sort of affected the way we talk about Devin Bush is that the chasm after him more than the player.
Right.
He's a nice player.
Yeah. That does go against the corporate draft strategy a little bit, though. That would be some hypocrisy.
He's a top 15 player. I feel pretty confident in saying that.
Absolutely.
But I think it makes it the only reason that the Steelers are even remotely contemplating trading up for him is that there isn't even a guy you could reach for at 20, an inside linebacker. In fact, it'd be a reach if they took an inside linebacker at 50, wherever they're picking the second round.
Yeah.
That is the reason that that's the reason if you do it, that's the reason you sell. Well, the reason we didn't trade up for Vander Esch a year ago, and then we're going to trade up for Bush this year, is that there's literally nobody else to take after it until their third round pick.
Yeah, and it would make you wonder, because then what maybe the criticism would be, they should have maybe worried about it last year, which even though they didn't miss the playoffs, it was evident from the Jackson playoff game that they missed Ryan Shazier, and now they put themselves kind of in the corner where it's an incredible position of need, but based on what Kevin Colbert has told us, they don't just go for need, which Allen would basically be arguing that if they do that, it would be hypocritical to kind of what he said 3 days ago. It would really be stressing need. And I'm not saying that there's
So you're saying it's impossible that the general wasn't completely truthful.
I'm not. I was there all season, trust me, in 2 years actually. I was there during the Villanova National Anthem fiasco. There's a tons of hypocrisy that's certainly possible, but taking them at face value in terms of their draft strategy, it would go. And honestly, even if they're allowed to be hypocritical, I don't know if that would be a sound draft strategy, because it would risk a lot of the rest of the draft, as we keep on saying, as we now go to the Denver pick here at 10. They're on the clock, and it's a situation where you figure maybe Denver goes quarterback here. Speaking of quarterback, though, and you brought up the point of Big Ben and the Steelers valuing quarterback, and knowing that maybe they need one for the future, even though they're re-signed Big Ben, gave him an extension, and he's going to be around until 2021 at the least, it's evident on how they handled the offseason. Because I got people tweeting at me during my drama-filled Antonio Brown shows all the time that Ben is not without blame, that Ben they cover up for Ben, that they protect Ben more than anybody else. Regardless of anybody's personal feelings on Big Ben or Antonio Brown or anybody else, the reason why you would do that, or why any of us would do that as sound football minds, is because he's a quarterback. He's an elite level quarterback that even though he made some mistakes last year, he threw for 5,000 plus yards. He still came off of one of his overall better years, much better than the year before. He's played at an elite level his whole career. He is a future Hall of Famer, and that's more important to an NFL team than a wide receiver in a position that you can replace quickly. They have had overturned with, from Plesko Burris to Antonio Holmes to Mike Wallace to AB now, or even a running back position where you don't need an elite running back to win. We even saw with the Rams, Todd Gurley got hurt, C.J. Anderson got off his couch, took him to the Super Bowl, it didn't really make a difference. So those situations are why the Steelers should have, and why they did protect Ben so much and put so much emphasis in Ben as a quarterback during the drama, but clearly not going to a quarterback early based on the extension like maybe they would have years ago, and even we saw with the Mason Rudolph selection.
So we've got some reports here that the Steelers are trading up to the
Devin Bush.
That would have to be the pick.
Put it on the board. Yeah, it's Devin Bush. Yeah, Devin Bush to the Steelers. Let's just start saying it out.
Yeah, I mean,
Devin Bush to the Steelers.
But like, is there another player that you can see them wanting?
No, there's absolutely not even close to another player.
It does kind of also
the
make
Steelers
sense
traded
why
up for
Denver
Devin
would
Bush.
maybe do
And
this.
then they would say that they were so interested in Devin Bush.
And also, unless they were going to take Haskins there,
Yeah,
then there it is.
What if the Steelers are taking Haskins?
No, the Steelers are taking Devin Bush.
Again, that would be a very entertaining press conference that I would love. That would get a lot of views if you ever put it on the channel. Unless Denver wanted to take a quarterback there because Haskins has dropped to them, then maybe you would trade out of that pick.
What I see from this decision by Denver is they clearly weren't planning on taking a quarterback there. They seem to feel that they are in a position where they can wait until the quarterback class of next year, which a lot of people think. They think they can survive a year.
They can get 1 year without Flacco.
Yeah, they can get a year with Flacco, survive with him for a season. They're going to rely on that defense, still relying on that running game. So they seem to be content with moving back, stockpiling more picks, and giving an opportunity clearly to the Steelers here to get the player they want, which I think we all believe is definitely Devin Bush.
Yeah, and as we said that we were going to do the show until the Steelers pick, because they traded up and they're at number 10 and already picking, we're going to keep on moving after the pick a little bit. I do want to touch on this pick and then other needs for the Steelers, what this means to the rest of the Steelers draft now, because there are still question marks on the offensive side of the football that we didn't get to yet. Mike Asti, Cale Berger, Parker Hurley, Alan Saunders, Steelers Now draft coverage here right at the Walnut Grill in Robinson. Thanks to Beaver County Auto as well here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And guys, again, Devin Bush is the pick. Again, you would imagine he is the pick. The Steelers is the pick.
Yeah,
definitely
Mark
the pick.
Cabali reported it. Mark
Okay.
Cabali reported it.
I believe Mark. So we're ahead of the TV again. So Devin Bush is the pick. The Steelers clearly, as we mentioned throughout this broadcast, they heavily covet this need. And yes, they can be hypocritical, claiming they didn't value need over the best available. But you could also argue he was the best available. And Mean Joe Green, the defensive pick that started it all, 1969, and then led to the Steel Curtain defense. We said on SteelersNow.com, he's announcing the first round draft pick for the Steelers. Holmes and Setcher are going to do the other ones. Here is Mean Joe Green making it official. But this is a pick that I feel like the controversial part of this, and I kind of want to get your guys' take on this. How does this change the rest? Obviously, this fills the need they've needed for 2 years. How does this change the rest of the Steelers draft? They really do have a lot of back-end picks. They have the third, except for Antonio Brown. What did they give up? What did they
We don't know what they gave up yet. I mean,
Yeah, that's the big issue.
That's the question.
That's a really hard part to answer this question right now. Is that it really depends on what they gave up, and I think the Steelers do not trade up very often.
No.
Troy Polamalu was the last player.
Santonio Holmes. Who caught the game-winning Super Bowl catch? I mean, Troy's a Hall of Famer. Santonio Holmes was that.
Which in Kevin Colbert's defense, that's what he brought up actually on Monday, that we've only done it a couple times. It's against what we normally do. We don't like doing it for need. But when we've traded up, we've hit Hall of Famer Troy Polamalu. Santonio Holmes, not a Hall of Famer, but a great player for them, and caught the game-winning pass to win a championship. So those are slam dunk moves, and maybe Devin Bush will be the same thing.
I'm a big fan of Devin Bush. I was just saying, hey, don't trade up because of Leighton Vander Esch, but I'm definitely a fan of Devin Bush. And what he brings is instincts, speed, power, really everything that you
The
need.
tweet of the draft right now.
Everything you
You gotta
need.
do a little description here. This is Eli Manning in his bowl cut.
Looks just like Daniel
In a
Jones.
side by side with Daniel Jones, the new quarterback that will learn under him, and they're basically the same person.
But yeah, the fact of the matter, this is everything that the Pittsburgh Steelers need. Like Alan said, there wasn't a third linebacker there to even, consider. So, they did what they had to do. And like you said, however the rest of the pieces fall out, well, they have Steven Nelson, the quarterback. They still have Bud for another year. They have issues for sure. But, I think it was Josh Norris said that if the middle of your defense is slow, your entire defense is slow. And if Devin Bush can add speed to the defense, that's what they need. So,
I've got the return here, and I think the reaction is going to be pretty positive. Steelers give up 20, 52, their second round pick, and their third pick in 2020.
that's not much.
That's it. And I think that's a pretty solid,
very good.
a pretty solid move for the Steelers.
Okay, so then again, that's not as much as I was assuming they were going to have to give up. that is not as much of a doomsday scenario for the rest of the draft. Pretzels here. We even got pretzels in the trade. We're making out here. They threw in some pretzels.
Steelers now has acquired.
We do. Steelers now is moving on up, guys. We weren't even a sight during the Steelers season, and now we got pretzels, a live draft show. We got multiple sponsors. We got Devin Bush, Susan Culver doing the interview. She's still, kicking. You know what?
Devin Bush also top 5 outfit. Look at this thing.
Top 5, top 3. Maybe.
Top 5 worst.
No, it's amazing. Look at this thing. It's incredible.
He looks like he's wearing. I thought he had a shoulder injury when he walked in.
Yeah, when Cale and
It looks like he's wearing parts of 2 different suits.
we honestly thought it was an arm sling where he broke his arm, and that was going to ruin this entire thing of trading up and trying to get him.
So they're showing right now him and his dad at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando after he won the state championship in Florida in 8A. His dad was the coach. His dad, obviously, Devin Bush Sr., 8-year NFL veteran, won a Super Bowl, and former standout at Florida State University. His dad actually coached him at Flanagan High School in Broward County in South Florida. So they're actually showing highlights.
Yeah, former NFL player in his own right.
Yeah, it's showing highlights of his dad right now. But I have to say, I was tasked with doing the Devin Bush research.
And
Devin
you
Bush,
did, by the way.
I
jumped in.
and I selected it.
I didn't go in.
But what I will say, like we talked about it, we pretty much talked about it nauseam right now. But I mean, he is, I think, the modern NFL linebacker that you want. I mean, he has the speed, like we talked about, that 4.43 40. He's also got the 40.5-inch vertical, so he's explosive as well. He does a great job running sideline to sideline. He's got great instincts. He's very. What I think watching him on film, which really impressed me, is he's very patient. He's almost like a running back in the aspect of he lets the blocks develop to end up hitting the hole, like a running back would hit the hole just on the other side of the line of scrimmage and meeting the running back in the hole. My only things that I would say are kind of, I guess, weaknesses of him. Obviously, he's a little bit undersized, but I think, size, just like age, is but a number. I mean, I think if you're a football player, if you're a good football player, if you know what you're doing out there, you have great instincts.
5'9" quarterback just got taken, or 5'10" quarterback.
Exactly. The first pick was a 5'9" quarterback. Other thing too, he has a tendency to challenge blockers instead of using his speed and quickness to try and slip them and get around guys. And he is a little over-aggressive at times and has kind of a tendency to over-pursue on certain plays. But he's the 2018 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time Buckus Award finalist. I mean, he is, I think he's a really great chance of being that next great Steelers linebacker. I think Devin Bush is that good, and I think this is a fantastic pick. And I think it's great the Steelers they took their shot and they decided to move up and get the guy that they wanted. I think that's important, and I mean, this is the best available because they moved up together.
So I'll defend even what they traded for because you start to look into it.
Okay. Feel free to dig in here.
The 52nd overall pick. They got the 66th overall pick for Antonio
And the
Brown.
Bengals don't do quarterback.
Wow, Jonah Williams
So
to the Bengals.
maybe he's the guy sliding with that Aaron Rodgers type of slide.
I got food in my mouth.
We can wait in a second here for the swallowing.
Right, I'll go on my way. So the
Tail you can chew, ladies and
So you still have the 66th overall pick from the Antonio Brown trade. So you say, okay, we moved back 14 spots. We traded Antonio Brown, moved back 14 spots, but we got Devin Bush in the process. They're going to get a compensatory pick for Le'Veon Bell in the 3rd round, about 3rd or 4th round in 2020. So, Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, you lost them, but they actually helped you get Devin Bush. So, okay, what did we lose? Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. We knew we were going to lose Antonio Brown.
And Bell in particular, because he wasn't there all last season. He basically made the
those
choice.
are sunk costs. So we took sunk costs and used that to move up, drop 14 spots from 52 to 66 and trade up 10 to get Devin Bush. I think that's fair.
I think before I get to what I was going to say with my mouth full of pretzels, which are delicious, by the way, thank you to Walnut Grill here in Robinson. I think the other big thing about Devin Bush is he's really good in coverage as well, which the Steelers need. That was something that was such an advantage they had with Ryan Shazier, is because he ran the fastest 40 time for a linebacker ever at the combine, because he was so athletic. He could cover, like we talked about, the running backs, the tight ends, in those 3rd down passing situations. Now Devin Bush can be that guy for the Steelers defense with his athleticism, with his speed. If you look at his stats for the last 2 years, in 2017, last season, he had 9 pass breakups and an interception, so he's really a guy who's comfortable as a pass defender and being comfortable playing in coverage. And I think that's big because they have a guy who's aggressive and soft in the run, can blitz. He has great pass rush moves as well. Sometimes they play him out on the edge. He can get, around a left tackle or a tight end or whoever was walking those situations. But all in all, 15 pass breakups over the last 2 seasons and that 1 interception in 2017. I mean, he is comfortable in coverage, and like we keep talking about, this is the modern NFL. This is 2019, and it is a passing league, and you need athletic, skilled linebackers that can cover guys in space, and I think Devin Bush is exactly that.
Did the fact, and clearly this is a need position, and the Steelers focused in on need, and the other big deal of this, which depends on the fact that I was against it so much at the beginning of the draft, I was admittedly against doing this, but to defend that point, the Steelers didn't have to give up nearly as much as I thought they were going to have to give up to make this trade. So based on this return, I'm certainly not against this for what Devin Bush can mean to the Steelers. But did any factor of this also go into the fact that maybe they don't love Greedy Williams, don't love the rest of the secondary options in this draft? So they basically said to themselves, we don't have to give up that much. Even though it's a little bit, we have a need here. We don't normally like to do it just for need, but if we don't do this now, we're not going to get another inside linebacker for several rounds, and we're not really going to get a corner that we love. So then we're really going to get a bad first 2 rounds of the draft, and we just miss the playoffs.
Well, I think that's exactly it. We talked about how we don't draft for need. Well, clearly, you identified the biggest need in your team, and you moved up and did everything in your power to get it. And I'm not sure if this is a knock on the defensive backs. I think they're just kind of they're more comfortable with their situation in the secondary than they are with the middle linebacker situation. I think that's what it comes down to.
I think one other point is Kevin Colbert's somebody, again, that I got to know in the last couple of years. He's taken a lot of flack for failure to draft the secondary in particular. Al and I, we know how these guys work. They know the criticism. They don't like it sometimes. He never really was even able to defend himself. He started bringing up Brian McFadden, who has been for like a decade. I think part of this could also be, this is an incredible, even though there's some risk there, they didn't give up the farm. It's not a rookie Williams giving up your entire draft. It's actually arguably a safe pick they feel like most of the fans will like, because they know they need to replace Ryan this year, and they've needed to for several years. But also, they don't jump into the risk of him drafting another corner and failing again, because these are risky corners. And if he's going to miss again after the rumors of trading up were out there, and they didn't fill the need, plus didn't get a quality corner, Kevin Colbert would be blasted every day to the fact that he would actually get criticized more than Mike Tomlin by some Steelers fans, which is saying something.